Lord, yes, papi, hit me one time and make it funky.
I was brought up and told to have no fear. I was brought up and told to have no fear. I was brought up and told to have no fear.
Welcome to the Full Circle Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, David Roberts, along with the oral historian, Andre Taylor, and the OG, Dr. Neil Holmes. Today, we are joining you live. I'm in Richmond, Virginia, the former Confederate capital, with Mr. Marty Jewell. Marty Jewell is a former Richmond, Virginia city councilman. He's currently the second vice chair of the Richmond Crusade for Voters, and probably most interesting to me, he is the chairman of the Cannabis Equity Coalition.
Of Virginia.
Of Virginia.
Of Virginia. Yeah.
All right. Mr. Jewell, thanks for having me today, having us and joining us.
You and Dr. Neil and I welcome you to this fine city of Richmond.
Thank you, sir. So why don't you talk to us first about what is the Cannabis Equity Coalition of Virginia and why it's important?
Well, it is very important. We came together late last year, 2020, knowing that this cannabis bill was going to be in front of the General Assembly beginning in January this year. And we needed some pretty strong advocacy to make sure that our concerns were included in the bill. Typically, we get forgotten. Right. Our needs get forgotten when they're crafting that sausage-making legislation. And so we did that. Lord, I've never been to so many committee meetings at General Assembly in all my life, and I've been hopelessly political all my life. Not that said, though, it's a good thing because they actually, they wanted to put this on par with the already 2 years ago legalized medical marijuana. And they wanted to put the regulatory framework under the ABC board because we unlike Philadelphia, our alcohol is regulated rather stringently through an AB Alcohol and Beverage Control Board, and we fought that back and won. And so they're going to set up a special cannabis authority to regulate cannabis once they get it operational. The other is that the medical marijuana bill that was passed 2 years ago is set up with a vertical integration model in which a company can actually do their own growing, their own processing and manufacturing, their own wholesale and retail. And we're saying, oh, hell no. We would never, Black folk would never fare with that arrangement. It would cost too much. And so we talked them into doing horizontal integration where you can fit in 4 different portals. You can be a grower, or you can be a processor or manufacturer, you can be a wholesaler or retail. And one of the benefits that they threw in there regarding equity is that they're setting aside 425 licenses for Black and brown people who have been impacted through over-enforcement of marijuana laws. So that's part of the equity package, and there's more. And then they have set up also in the bill, there will be what they call a equity community reinvestment board. Now they're tagging on 21% surcharge on all marijuana sales at whatever level. That surcharge plus the regular sales tax of 5.5%, Virginia state sales tax. They're going to put 30% of that, all of those new taxes into that community reinvestment board, which is strictly for Black and brown people who have been harmed over the years. Now, we came in fighting to get it up to 70%. But the governor's wife is a teacher. And she has talked them into setting aside 40% of that money to go into pre-K statewide, where normally that money would come out of the general fund.
Right.
So we're still fighting that. There might be a special session before the end of the summer that we could go back at another bite of the apple. And because this bill was passed this past January in with a reenactment clause, they got to bring it back up in January, next General Assembly session, 22, to re-vote it. And so we get another bite at the apple then to get that baby up. 2 weeks before we passed our bill, New Jersey passed their bill and they put 70% into their community reinvestment board.
Mm-hmm.
And we may not get it to 70%, that's what we're calling for, but if they got it up to 50%, we'd be happy. JLOC, Joint Legislative Audit and Review Commission, is the state's study apparatus. And studying marijuana legalization in Virginia, they project that the very first year of operation, they will generate up to $150 to $300 million in taxes.
That's just taxes, not revenue.
Taxes.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, this baby will generate over $1 billion a year in the next 5-7 years. And so 30% of that money is significant.
Right.
We've got 132 municipalities in the state of Virginia. And if you did the math, you find that those municipalities would be eligible for $1 million plus that would go in, be made available for nonprofits that are, you got to compete in the grant applications, but it would be available for our nonprofits to strengthen up our community. Our business development needs support. Everybody knows the biggest killer of Black business is too little accounting and too little legal. And so we can find those services and augment their fees in such a way that it will be affordable for our business class. Let me step back for half a second and just make the point that our business class is suffering big time across the country. And that the Pew Research Center just recently did a study that showed where the 08 crash, 08 financial crash caused Black folk to lose 45% of our businesses and 50% of our collective wealth, most of which was in the equity in our homes and our 401ks evaporated. And we are the last ethnic group to recover. Right. And so that money will be a huge help towards what I call building an economic floor. Out of those 132 municipalities, I dare anybody show me one in which Black folks are included in the economic mainstream. Ain't so. And until we get included in the economic mainstream, we're not going to have some of those vexing problems that trouble us every day. We're not going to be able to get that to go away. You can wish and hope all you want, it ain't going nowhere.
Now, when I think about, Brother Jewel, when I think about this new cannabis industry and the revenue it's going to generate, I think about all of the industries that we seem to be excluded from, like Silicon Valley, you know, even professional sports. We're the ones on the fields, but we're not the owners.
Well, come on.
And then even in the Black hair care industry, and we've talked about that on this show,
come on.
You know, that generates 70 million or 70 billion with a B, I believe. We're the ones that keep it going, but we're not profiting from it.
Absolutely.
So I think it's important, and I want to say this to anyone, it's not about cannabis itself. You know, if you've grown and that's what you like to do, cool. If you're not, fine.
I ain't smoked a joint since 1968.
And
don't intend to.
And I haven't smoked one since. No, I'm just joking.
Right.
But it's just about the revenue that is going to, and it's great to be at the beginning. None of us were around in 1920 when the NFL was started.
That's right. That's right.
Some of these other, we weren't on the ground floor, but it's great to just be on the ground floor of this.
David, it's even worse. My doctor, been my doctor for 20 years plus. And he talks about how all of the Black doctors virtually have been bought up by hospital associations. Bon Secours is his umbrella, and he works for them. He no longer has his own business per se.
Right.
And so they've reached down into all facets of the economy, and we are sort of sucking mud at the bottom of the barrel of the boat. Mm-hmm. And so until we have enough revenue to plan around and to begin to strategize on how we can build an economic floor on which to build something, we got nothing.
Right.
Because we've neglected our economy for so long. And when you consider that there's a direct correlation between income and social behavior, you begin to understand why we're having these difficulties in society, in Black society, and know the challenge now of getting out of it. You can't do it without our own fund. We've only been free for 50 years in relative terms since the signing of the Civil Rights Act. But it shouldn't take us 50 years to know that we got to build our own United Way. Mm-hmm. All right? Right. That ain't rocket science. And so, but since we're talking about that, let me make this point, which talks about, highlights the very profound importance of the passage of this bill. We call it landmark legislation when we got the Civil Rights Act bill passed, and it took us out of apartheid. And in relative terms, we become first-class citizens. The same thing a year later with the Voting Rights Act. Mm-hmm. In relative terms, we can now vote early and vote often, although Republicans are trying to put the kibosh on that as we speak. Right. But the fact is, neither one of those bills set aside a pool of money to correct the harm. And this is about as landmark as you can get when those millions of dollars are set aside that we can divvy it up every year that money comes. On sort of on the order of the tobacco settlement fund that was set up when Philip Morris and all those tobacco companies got caught lying about smoking cigarettes ain't harmful to your health. Right. There were billions of dollars put aside for them, and it's only for those who were disproportionately impacted. I just learned this year that those dollars don't come any farther north in Virginia than Dinwiddie County, just below Petersburg. Mm-hmm. Anybody north of that can't get a dime of that money. Well, I don't quite understand that because Richmond was the home of all the tobacco manufacturers in the state. Nonetheless, that's what we got. And so this is built on the order of the equity fund is built on the order of the tobacco settlement fund.
Now, if say for someone that's out there listening and they live in Virginia, but of course this is going to happen nationwide eventually. I think every state.
Oh, I think so.
Yeah. So if let's just use Virginia right now, since mm-hmm. that's where you have your expertise. If I'm someone living in Virginia and I say, I want to be in on this, mm-hmm. What could I do to get one of those licenses and to get established in this industry?
Well, the actual industry does not commence until they set up the regulatory framework, which would, according to them, doesn't occur until January of 2024.
Okay.
So we got time to start putting our money together, putting our organizations together, getting our legal footing set up, and setting up all the things that you normally would do to set up a business. And excuse me, do your financials, because they are also creating an entity that would provide no interest loans to Black and brown people. No interest loans to Black and brown people in order to facilitate you getting your business set up and a license hooked up. Beyond that, I don't know what to do other than get ready with you in order to get that you can get to go. And reach out for investors. You can be an LLC and sell on a retail level, or you can be a grower. There are folks growing hemp right now. Well, there ain't a big transition over to marijuana. The point, though, is that we visited the medical marijuana plant right here in Richmond, Southside, and they're growing all of their marijuana in-house, indoors, with lights, temperature control, and all that. And they make the point. They make the point that growing it outside in the field ain't the best way to do marijuana. Number one, you got thieves out there. The thieves gonna get you, all right? If the worms don't get you, the thieves gonna get you. But number two, the level of potency is controlled when you can grow inside, and you can manage the level of potency, which enhances the value of your product. And so there's a lot to learn about this industry. And I'm hopeful that either I or our group can set up a consultancy. We got to bone up on all of the ins and outs of this industry, because we don't know a darn thing about it. And Black folk being the main ones that get arrested fooling with it, we ain't gonna take the chance to try to learn about it. Well, one of the other things that we had advocated, and we're still advocating, is that the larger firms take on our smaller African-American firms as partners or mentor proteges. And for a year or more, familiarize our folk on all aspects of the industry. Either after that term is over, either maintain that partnership or spin us off, and we'll go from there. But at least we come with competitive knowledge of what that industry is about, so that we can compete in a successful way.
So it sounds like what you're saying is, like, if I wanted to get into this industry now, you said we have time, but I need to decide whether I want to be a retailer, a wholesaler, a grower, and probably form an LLC and put together a business plan. And probably seek out some investors.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. Absolutely. Okay. Or partners. There are enough of us, and I don't know who they are, but we can set up agency in such a way that folks who are interested can make contact with us, get a website set up, and we can set up classes. We could set up the Department of Agriculture can come in and do certain trainings, because there's going to be a health aspect to this. You can't just get past the health aspect. You can't be putting poisonous fertilizer in the ground and think you're gonna grow some damn weed and then be killing people. So there is that health element. And then excuse me, there's another control area. I can't remember it right now, but they've got this thing well figured out. And so you're going to have to pass scrutiny on these various parts before you can actually get your license, these various entities, be it health, be it the whole notion of training people on how what your limits are in terms of how much you can smoke without doing harm to yourself, and all of that stuff. Youth, and how we can begin to educate youth to stay away from it until they turn 21. So there's a public health element to it all too.
All right. Now, oh, go ahead, Dre. You had a question, comment?
Yeah, going back to the legal aspect of it, can you elaborate on what this bill does going forward when we think about the legal system and arrest and a disproportionate number of African Americans that do get arrested for possession and so forth of marijuana? What does this do for those laws in the state? Like, how does the transition happen so that people, when you legalize it, you know, people aren't being arrested anymore for it? So how does this change things, and what legal aspects are put into this bill?
Excellent question. Thank you, Dre. As things stand now, they have, as of last summer, decriminalized marijuana. So if you get caught with less than an ounce, you get a parking ticket and a $25 fine. The equivalent of a parking ticket, a $25 fine, no arrest. It's not criminal. Above that now, you can get whacked. They also are sealing your arrest record such that folks can't go into your criminal record and find that you've been convicted of marijuana. Now that's different from expungement. They also are allowing expungement under certain cases. Sealing is one thing. Expungement, seal records means that the public can't see your records. But if you get a subsequent charge and wind up in court, the judge can see your record.
Right.
You don't want that,
right?
Expungement means that you don't get, it disappears off your record altogether. And some will be expunged, some will be sealed, and I'm not exactly sure how all that works. So as of July 1, though, you can have up to an ounce of marijuana in your possession anywhere publicly, and it's totally legal. That's next month in Virginia. But I wouldn't advise you to ride around in the passenger component of your car. Put in your trunk.
Okay.
Right? Put in your trunk. Because these police, I mean, it breaks their heart that they can't arrest Black folk now coming up to your car because you got a broken tail light and, oh, I smell marijuana in your car, I need to search you.
Right.
All that goes away. In fact, that provision in law has gone away in Virginia. You can't walk up to somebody's car and say, I smell marijuana, and think that you can handle somebody.
Let me piggyback off that and kind of piggyback off Dre's question. All right, right now it's legal to buy and sell cigarettes. You know, you can get cigarettes at the Walgreens or CVS. Right. Yet, and I wish I could remember his name, the brother in Baton Rouge lost his life for standing outside in front of the store selling cigarettes.
Single cigarettes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Eric Garner in New York.
Oh, that was
Eric Garner in New York.
Okay,
yeah.
Thank you. That was Alton Sterling in Baton Rouge.
Yes. Right.
Yes. Glad I could remember that. Shout out to those brothers and their families.
Yes.
So what about the guy? Because I've visited dispensaries, you know, and just because it was such an interesting thing, I visited dispensaries in DC. And so they might have packages $50, $60. So what if there's still some guy that's like, I just want a $10 bag, and so he goes to his guy he always been going to. Can that guy selling him the $10 bag? Is it okay as long as he has less than an ounce in his possession, or do we know that yet?
Does that guy have a license?
No, I'd say he doesn't have a license.
He's about to go to jail.
Okay.
Yeah, you gotta have a license to sell. So if you want to buy, you need to buy from a reputable licensed establishment.
Okay, so I know right now, like you can get a business license in Virginia, and I guess it's different in other states, for like $100. Will someone be able to get a license to sell marijuana for $100, or that would just be their business license, and then it'll be an extra charge for the marijuana license?
No, as I understand it, and they're still promulgating the regulation. So I don't want to sound too definitive here.
Right.
But my understanding that once you get that business license to sell marijuana, that is your only license you need.
Okay.
Yeah. And it, like I said, it can be one of the 4 portals. You can sell that marijuana at a retail level. You can sell it at a wholesale level. You can grow it, and you can process or manufacture it.
Okay.
And when I say manufactured, we were able to visit this medical marijuana plant over in Southside, and it gave us the grand tour. And they literally had a room where young people were in there extracting this fluid out of the stems that they use to make marijuana extract that I guess you pour into your brownies and you pour into your,
Right.
you know, it's not the actual leaf that you put in your brownies, it's the extract.
Right. The gummies
The
and
gum, yes,
all
yes,
of
yes,
that.
yes, right. And let me make another point, and that was at Lord, I'm forgetting exactly where I was going with it. Oh, you can grow up to 4 plants in your house. It's legal. Beginning once this thing starts in 2024. Now they say 2024, they've given themselves 3 years to set the regulation up. I don't think it's going to take that long. And they say that it probably will be done in a year less than that. But you can actually own 4 plants, 2 mature plants, 2 immature plants, and own that in your home and smoke it in your home.
No.
You can do that.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
What you should be able to do. Dr. Holmes, you've been quiet. You have anything? I know you sitting on something over there.
Look at it.
I had a couple of questions. The first one, you mentioned that that there will be a competition in terms of the nonprofits for, you know, for the tax money, for that part of the tax money.
Reinvestment fund money.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Who is going to set the criteria that determines, you know, if you're competing for the money, who's going to set the criteria for what's going to be allowable in terms of funding, in terms of those nonprofits? Who's going to say, okay, well, we want to look at economic development as a #1 objective for these nonprofits. We want to look at maybe who's going to.
You and Dre are on the money with these questions. The excellent question. I may have mentioned that they're setting up an Cannabis Equity Reinvestment Board that will oversee or evaluate grant applications for the Cannabis Equity Reinvestment Funds, right? And we're fighting to make sure some of our people get on that board, because typically the governor will appoint X number, legislators will appoint X number, and they typically grab some Black bureaucrat that they're friends with to sit on that board, who wouldn't have a clue about the struggle that people going through on the ground, or the value of the nonprofits that exist to serve those people. They wouldn't have a clue about them. And so we don't want that. We want a assurance that the right people get on that board. Now, this governor is on his way out. But there's a good chance they're going to start appointing that board before he leaves. And so we'll work with him in terms of increasing the percentage of how much of that money goes into the Black community. We need to start working on McAuliffe, who just won the primary to run for governor, and chances are he's going to win again. Virginia State's gone blue, like it or not. And so we gotta do the work around with Governor Northam and go after McAuliffe in hopes that we can talk him into enhancing or sweeten the pot with regards to that fund. But that board will determine, to your question, Dr. Neal, will determine what the criteria is, how much of your request they will fund. What do you got to do? And I'm hopeful that we can talk them into whatever programs they fund, that they are financially sustainable programs that we can begin to build on and start getting sproutings of economic activity that can go into, for instance, we underutilize the cooperatives. There's a stretch of road or over here in the East End between Cool Lane and Fairfield Avenue. 13 businesses along that six block stretch, all owned by foreigners. We checked, they all gross over $1 million. And they hire nobody out of those communities. Not a dime of that money goes back in those communities. And the irony is that you're generating at least $13 million a year, but it's surrounded by 3 major size public housing developments. So the poorest of the poor is pumping $13 million plus into these businesses, and not one of them owned by Black folk. But what if we put together a co-op and train up the people in the neighborhood to operate, to run the store? Yeah, we'll have to set up a back office operation to manage the money, not a problem. And half of that profit would go into programs in that neighborhood. The other half of the profit goes into a fund to begin setting up store number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, and run them out of here. Just run them out of the neighborhood. That's doable if we had the economic thought leaders in place to come up with strategies like that. And we will. This 4-part plan that I've got is business development, part 1, fund development, part 2, neighborhood development, part 3, and the neighborhood is the marketplace. And we get these businesses to support our marketplace, and the marketplace will support our businesses. And then the 4th one is research and development. I got a friend, he's a white guy up at James Madison University, who is a research PhD. He said, Marty, you need any research done, you give me a call, I have a team in Richmond in a week. And I'm saying, Pody, I don't want you to bring no researchers here. I want you to bring your team here. We got 7 universities in Richmond Metro. They got enormous resources. I mean, 7 if you count Randolph-Macon to the north and Virginia State University to the south, and the 2 community colleges. Enormous resources. And we have yet to learn how to access it. White folks are accessing it big time. And so we could use their students as interns. We can use their professors as thought leaders. We can use their economic departments to help craft strategies about how to go after building wealth from the bottom up, and the protections that need to be put in place in order to sustain them. So we just don't have the leadership. Year ago, Neil, you know Bernice Travers. Right. She put on an event over at Virginia Union last January. Who is that for the people that aren't from Virginia? I'm sorry, Bernice Travers is a past president of the Richmond Crusade for Voters. She's been a community activist all her life. Okay. Smart as a button. She's the only woman back then. In that day, she's older than me. Graduated from the University of Richmond, Black woman. Anyway, and the subject was the topic of the event. About 50 people showed up about the Black male in the family. And during Q&A, I asked the question, let me see a show of hands of any of you here who know one person in all of Richmond Metro that you would call an economic leader. Not one hand went up. That's our problem. Economics, the most neglected dimension of Black life. And we were talking earlier, I'm talking about something as simple as our neighbor that we used to know in a 2 square block area years ago. We knew our neighbors by name. We knew each other's children's name. In a 2 square block area today, we don't know our neighbors 2 doors down.
Mhm.
We don't understand that we are each other's greatest assets. We knew it then, we got to recraft that all over again. Maggie Walker and her cohorts 100 years ago built the largest Black economy in the South. I know they talk about Tulsa, but Richmond won't no punk. Richmond won't no joke. And we had up to 7 banks at one time and 3 insurance companies. We had doctors, we had lawyers, we built a hospital. Richmond hasn't built a commercial building. Black folk in Richmond haven't built a commercial building since 1980. With all the construction going on, we got $3 billion worth of construction going on as we speak in this town. Ain't us.
What happened to that Black economy? All that was built with Maggie Walker.
That's an excellent question. There's a huge history on it. I'll email you some information, but the white folks drove I-95 through the heart of that Jackson Ward neighborhood and destroyed it, separated it and destroyed it. And I watched it, I'm 75 years old. I watched it deteriorate over time, down to nothing. And now they're coming back. They killed Navy Hill neighborhood. That's where the same, Richmond's been run by corporate as long as Richmond been Richmond, except the 4 years Doug Weiler was mayor, right? And they meet regularly out at the Country Club, Virginia, and they hire well-paid consultants to come in and plan Richmond 30 years out. Plans that neither you nor me nor city government will ever see until they're ready to peel off a piece of it and roll it out. And until we fix that, we're screwed. But that and it is fixable. But the fact is that they've got that highway, they had 2 referendum elections to choose when city council back then was all white. This is in the 50s. To choose which of 3 routes they were going to run I-95 through Richmond. And twice the majority white voters says, no, do not take it through Jackson Ward. They went behind everybody's back, city council did, to the General Assembly and got them to approve the route right through the heart of Jackson Ward. It was intentional to destroy that wealthy neighborhood. So this is where we are. And that's another example of how they have, how we have taken 1 step up and 2 steps back, right, with the help of powerful white folks who understand that if we ever get a toehold on the economy, Katie bar the door. Right. Katie bar the door.
Yeah, I want to add something too. You know, if you look at 95, I-95 running from north to south,
right,
has displaced almost 4 million African people.
Yes.
You also see the same displacement coming through Columbus, through LA, through Akron, Ohio, through almost every metropolitan.
Oh, it's a national plan, just as the Republicans are suppressing our votes in all the legislatures. It was the thing to do.
Yeah.
It's filthy. We got to stand up to it. I mean, these young people, I'm so proud of them, I don't know what to do, who protested last summer and who peel off invisible layers of how they have screwed us in all facets of our society, in healthcare, in education, in economy, in jobs and promotions. I mean, they just took the cover off all of that stuff that they've been doing, not to mention the god-awful things they were doing in the criminal justice system to us.
Right.
And all that's been laid bare. Our job right now is to get with these young people and say, don't back off now, y'all.
Right.
Y'all need to sit your happy ass down right now and let's strategize on building policy to correct these things that we have now uncovered.
And let me close with this, and I want to hear you and Dr. Holmes especially comment on this. I look at this as with what's going on with marijuana as the I guess the first battle, because I would like to see, and some of you may disagree, I'd like to see a time when all drugs are legal, not because I want to see people smoking crack or shooting up heroin or destroying their lives. That's not it. It's just that I feel like someone that does do crack or shoot heroin, they're someone that's hurting. You know, they're not someone, they may become a criminal because they're stealing to finance their habit, but they're not like someone who necessarily needs to be thrown in jail. Do you think there'll ever come a time when all drugs will be legal? And we already know the pharmaceuticals are legal. They worse than heroin and crack, but they lobby the legislature. They are the biggest lobbyists. So you're able to get all these opioids and things. You just go to the doctor and get them. Do you think there'll ever be a time, and it may be 20, 30 years, when everything will be legal and we'll start dealing with the mental health aspect of drug addiction as opposed to criminalizing it?
Now, you asking me to be a soothsayer. I ain't no darn soothsayer, but we can start now. You gotta wait no 20, 30 years. We can start now having that discussion with the right thought leaders in the room at a round table, because it's all been laid bare. Now, we can fix the criminal justice system or begin to fix it and point out certain practices that we need to eliminate, certain practices we need to include. That's happening now. Just 2 weeks ago, I was invited to Hanover County. Hanover County police is being done by the sheriff's department. The sheriff prides himself with being way up here at the top in terms of social equity and fair play in policing. But what people don't know is Ashland is a township in Hanover, and Ashland police are god awful, but Hanover Sheriff's Department gets blamed for it, right?
Right.
And so we've made a friend. My nephew got a contract cleaning the whole sheriff complex out there.
Oh, okay.
And they've become fast buddies. Nonetheless, the guy is fair. He's built a relationship with the NAACP state president who lives in Hanover. And they're working things out. We can work things out just by sitting at the table and talking about alternatives to incarceration and criminalization, when you know that people who shoot drugs, people who do what's the medication that they're doing now, that
I can't even keep, because I was told they don't do crack anymore. One of the earlier shows, I was told I was out of touch.
Oh, bullshit. They're doing crack. They're doing crack. I got a few crackhead neighbors around. But it's those pills that they prescribe. That's the most demonic thing you've ever seen. And I can't think. What am I trying to say, Neil?
You're talking about that. I know you're talking about
Percocet.
That's close.
Yeah.
That's close, but that ain't what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
Anyway,
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
The manufacturers of those are in court right now, having purposefully lied to doctors or set up doctors and paid them to prescribe this stuff.
Yeah,
they know that was addicting all of these folks all across America. White folks.
Yeah, OxyContin.
OxyContin, thank you.
It was and see what's interesting is that the noise has died down a little bit on that But now more African people are dying from those opioids
Yes,
than whites.
yes.
And so as the death rate for whites went down on opioids, the death rate from blacks are going up on opioids. And especially in the old East Coast, you know, old heroin centers like Baltimore, Richmond, etc., where you're really seeing them go up. Chicago, some cities were old heroin centers anyway.
Mhm.
And that's where those, you know, OxyContin and then some other things have come in there. The interesting thing is that the death rate from those commercial drugs, the legal ones, was higher than the death rate from the drugs you got from your neighborhood
Dope man.
dealer. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, you know, in some ways, I'm going to be able to put a little pessimism in here. In some ways, the problem, I mean, I would like to see everything legalized too, but the problem is not the legalization of the drugs, it's the legalization of us.
Mhm.
We're the thing that's illegal. Because even let's take marijuana, when it was illegal, you could go to New York and 80% of 90% of everybody who was arrested was either black or brown.
Right.
Same thing in DC. It wasn't that white folks were not breaking the law. The law wasn't, but they were themselves were illegal and they weren't getting arrested. So we have to break through what some of us call domestic colonialism and have a sense of ownership of ourselves and our communities that has been difficult to do ever since we've been enslaved here.
Well, the fact is, we had agency in our community when we were coming up. I might be a few years older than you, Doc.
Just a few.
I might have you by a few. You still got pet milk on your breath. But look, what we had, we can get back.
Yeah.
Our problem is our civic fabric is ripped to shreds. What we don't have, our NAACP and Crusade for Voters is on life support. The Urban League, whose mission is to lift up the economic lifeblood of the Black community, is out of business in Richmond. You call them up and you get somebody in Norfolk.
Yeah.
And so civic associations are flaming out. We got 44 schools in Richmond Public Schools. Half of them don't have active PTAs advocating for our babies. And the half that we do have, half of those are controlled by the principal. It's not a grassroots effort. And so we've got to rebuild our civic fabric. The Richmond Crusade for Voters was founded in 1956, right after the 54 Brown case. And the NAACP attempted to integrate schools in 55. But they were structured in a way that anybody can look at your membership rolls. So white folks start demanding the membership rolls so they can take reprisals out on Black folk who work for them. And they fired them. Hello. And so the Crusade for Voters was created and structured in a way that those membership rolls are not public. And the NAACP folded in with the Crusade. The Black churches folded in with the Crusade. We organized civic associations. We organized block clubs all over Black communities across the city. And we own the politics. Doug Wilder was arrived at senator and then governor because he came through the Richmond Crusade for Voters. We had that kind of power and we pissed it away, and we got to get it back. Now, I just finished talking with this lady, Andrea Miller. Sister girl been down in Georgia all last year with Stacey Abrams fighting like a banshee, getting those Black folk to get out to vote, and did a magnificent job. She is bringing that expertise back to Richmond. I call her the queen of digital because she knows how to work this van system that's got every registered voter and not registered voter in Virginia on it, that we know now whose door to knock on to get them registered, who's not been voting, so we know that they can get that data is there. And so she's come back here with Centers for Common Ground, who is setting up what's called democracy centers. It's about to partner with the Crusade for Voters. And we will finally have the kind of digital access that we can begin between now and the November election as a test pilot case, and see how many folks, our folk, we can get out and get to voting. We're not in that much danger, but you can't relax one bit the way these Republicans own these legislatures where they are tearing us up, suppressing our vote.
Mhm.
That is their lifelong mission, to keep us down on the farm.
And with that, you know, I'm thinking with the all the information you've given us
Mhm.
about the voting and the equity.
It all
with the
comes back
cannabis
to it.
that's-
Yes.
Exactly. I'm sure there are a lot of people, some probably in Virginia, some that are listening and watching us in other states, who would love to, you know, get in touch with you. How can they contact the Cannabis Equity Coalition or you to get more information?
Lord Jesus, we got a website. I don't know the address.
Don't
You-
worry about it. I'll look it up and I'll post it on this.
You contact me, do that, please.
Mhm.
Contact me at email address is Marty, MARTYJ 957@gmail.com.
And I'll post that as well so
All right.
everybody can see that.
Excellent.
Well,
Excellent.
brother Marty, we appreciate you
I
joining
totally
us.
enjoyed y'all.
I enjoyed it too. I think we got to have you back because we could go on for another 2 hours.
Oh, yes, you could.
So, you know, on behalf of myself, Dr.
Yeah.
Holmes, Andre, again, we want to thank you. We appreciate you.
I go down in the foxhole any day with Neil Holmes.
And so would we. And we'll have you back on.
Bet on it.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Good seeing you guys.
All right.
Lord, yes, papi, hit me one time and make it funky.
I was brought up and told to have no fear.